Hello everyone, I'm Wendell Jones and welcome to this edition of the program Jones and Company. On this program we examine national issues. At the end of the day, it's about the economy, no matter what happens in the Bahamas. And there are a good many people who believe that since the recession of 2008, the recovery really never arrived in the Bahamas, even though there were peaks and valleys in businesses around the country. And on our program today, we are going to discuss the economy of the Bahamas in general terms. Our guest here today is a person who has been involved in the financial services sector for many years. As a chartered accountant, he is the managing partner of Deloitte & Touche, Mr. Raymond Winder, who is sought after in many organizations around the country to speak to organizations on matters financial. Mr. Winder, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Good evening, Mr. Jones. It's good to be here.
Katrinius, nice to have you.
Thank you.
As usual, you look very summery.
Yes, my modus operandi has changed.
Your modus operandi has changed, I see. Okay, very good. Well, these days, my modus operandi will be such. A relaxed...
not relaxed.
Be a man of leisure.
No, sir, not a man of leisure.
Okay. Mr. Winder, describe what we see happening in the economy of the Bahamas today, or perhaps I should ask you, what is the economy like today?
I think in spite of movement from the recession, I think we're still suffering from the fact that we were over-leveraged. And when I say we, I'm saying that's the government, the businesses, and individuals. If you were to look at the balance sheet of banks, you will see that non-performing loans are still at the same level that they were during the recession. And you ask yourself the question, where are the new customers, individuals that can borrow new funds that can create new activities in the country? Where are the businesses that do not currently right now have more than what I consider reasonable amount of debt on their books? And their challenges are trying to find ways to pay those debts off. And so we find ourselves in a situation where we're still going through a deleveraging period. And the challenging part about that, Mr. Jones, is there's no end in sight as to when we could say that our economy has been able to go through a process where government, businesses, and individuals can borrow at the kind of levels that we had prior to the recession, which helps the economy to move in the kind of direction.
Mr. Winder.
And so that is the main drag on the economy. And even though the government may do new projects and additional projects, we have to bear in mind that that's what we're having to work through.
Mr. Winder, isn't the Bahamas a victim of its own bad policies from the perspective of we have not reinvented ourselves? We have had the same economy for the last 60 odd years. And as a result of that, the world has changed on us, and we have not adapted to a changing world. If you look in the U.S., for example, the U.S. economy has changed. I can remember it was a time when American economy was based on how many cars were sold. Detroit, how many cars, right? Now we're in the era of the computer era, where you get the Bill Gates and all these Microsoft and the internet. The economy has changed.
Yes.
Our economy has not changed.
That's true. That's true. I mean, and the sad part about it is that the business that we've been in for the last 25 years, that has changed, and that has presented a new look. For example, the financial services sector. You know, we went from a period of being a country where individuals sought to incorporate entities in the Bahamas. And we moved from that where we tried to embrace those individuals from the standpoint of establishing physical presence in the Bahamas. And now, because financial services institutions themselves are being challenged around the world and they're coming together in order to reduce cost, we see now that they too are looking to consolidate their operations. Yeah. So there, I looked at a report that was in one of the dailies, and it indicated that some 81 net persons had lost their job last year in the offshore financial services sector. Now, I am willing to say that the average salary for those 81 persons must be in the range from $75,000 to $100,000. Now the question is, what kind of jobs are we generating in our economy today to be able for those individuals to earn a similar amount? And that is a challenge. And you're right, we haven't actually broadened the base in terms of the kinds of things that we do. But on the other hand, the cost of actually doing business in the Bahamas continues to rise. And all of our infrastructure costs, BEC and the likes of those are not helping the process.
So the financial services sector in the Bahamas is changing, isn't it?
It is.
Changing, not for the better, it seems, because you are losing business to some other jurisdictions. There is a decline in the number of Bahamians who are working in the sector. And what about the products that are available in the financial services sector, offshore in particular, that would be attractive for people to do business with Bahamas?
Well, I think we have developed some new products. I mean, there's the smart funds seems to be a very, very it seems to be an entity that is attracting a lot of investors. But the challenge with the smart fund is that it really doesn't generate a lot of jobs. You have an individual or two to five individuals forming a fund. They invest in certain securities around the world. They set up a company to hold those investments. That's it. It's a good thing. But the reality is that isn't generating a lot of jobs. That doesn't require a lot of accounting. It doesn't require an audit. And it doesn't have a lot of technical issues where you would need the services of lawyers. So identifying products has been something that we've been doing, but the reality is we've got to now, in my humble assessment, really look at how we can attract individuals with significant means to establish in the Bahamas. I mean, it was good to see the government the other day talk about strengthening the procedures and policies of ensuring that individuals can get permanent resident faster. But I am prepared to go even further to say that we ought to really look at having a product to attract individuals who so desire to have citizenship in the Bahamas. I can't imagine a person being a billionaire and wanting to establish citizenship in the US or Canada, and there's a challenge of making that happen. Well, in the Bahamas, there seems to be an issue. I mean, we have thrived as a country on attracting individuals with significant means in this country in the past. To me, that's still an attractive opportunity for us. But clearly, what has happened around the world is that countries around the world now are dealing a little bit more diligently with individuals relative to their taxes. And while today their laws may not be like the US, where you are taxed on your worldwide income, I can assure you they are trying to find ways to tax their citizens more who are outside of the country. And so today that is moving. And so to me, I think we need to embrace that possibility in a big way. And not only let's look at permanent resident, let's look at coming up with products to attract individuals with significant talent or significant wealth to the Bahamas to become permanent resident and citizens.
But when you do that, you have some Bahamians who suggest that you are selling citizenship.
Well, I think every country around the world does it. The U.S. is always looking for ways to attract talent and investment. And they will do whatever they have to do to make that happen. It doesn't take a whole lot for the Bahamas. We have to get over some of these, what I call concerns, and look at the big picture. You mentioned the fact that we haven't embraced other industries. Well, to me, a part of embracing other industry will be to embrace talent in a big way, because you really can't identify where the next invention is going to come from. But if you have a policy that attracts talent, you don't have to worry. The talent will eventually evolve in such a way that you would get opportunities from it.
But if you have phobias in the Bahamas, Mr. Winder, people are xenophobic. People are very insular about their country, the Bahamas. And they really believe that the country ought to be developed by Bahamians. And they do not think as broadly as you are doing. You would need to go on a campaign to educate people.
And it's so sad, right?
On this thing.
Mr. Jones, and that's so sad, because any average Bahamian, if you ask them, where have we gotten the wealth that we currently have in this country? And all of the wealth came from individuals or entities with significant means. So, you would think that it wouldn't take a whole lot, but you're right. But because we have so many other concerns, it tends to get in the way. But, I think we are now in an era, Mr. Jones, where it requires bold initiative on the part of our politicians and our business in order to do big things to make things happen for this country. For too long, we tend to lie behind making big moves until we think the citizenry has some level of knowledge to go with us. Well, guess what? Some of us are only going to be around for the benefits, but if we have to wait around for some of them to vote to make that happen, it's not going to happen.
I think our fundamental problem is that we are people who resist change. I see that every day. They can find every reason in the world to resist change. And so how are we going to get better if we don't try and transform ourselves? Tell me.
Well, you remember when the good Lord was taking the children of Israel to the promised land? You know how we got better? Those that started with him died in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So you need a new generation.
Yeah.
Because if you wait until the old generation change, you're right, it's not going to happen. But there are a lot of new thinkers out there, young Bahamians who I think who truly feel the way I do.
Yeah, but in order for these things to happen, the political directorate must lead the way, it seems.
I agree.
And they are gun shy in many ways. There's this attitude that they don't want to rock the boat or upset the apple cart or the electorate. There's this reticence on the part of the political directorate to transform the way we do things. And so how would real transformation of the economy take place?
Well, Jones, we're heading on a pace. If those that are been given the responsibility of governing and making this transition don't do it voluntarily, then someone else is going to force us to do it if we don't. But we will.
Yeah. You talk about lagging behind, right? We've lagged behind in joining WTO.
Yeah.
We're still not a member of WTO.
No.
We are lagging behind in equality for the sexes, for women and men in the country. And you go down the line and you see that we have not adopted best practices
in many areas,
of national life.
Yeah. You're backward.
Well, you gentlemen, you know, I have to agree with you. I try to do my part by trying to educate those wherever I can to see the big picture. But the reality, success is an interesting thing in terms of the impact it has on an individual. And the reality is, as Bahamians, from 1967 until 2000, the movement of the Bahamian in terms of actual wealth and access, it's just been tremendous. And we've had it so good that we really haven't had a need to look and dwell on this.
But isn't the middle class, though, shrinking?
It is. It is shrinking. I mean,
You gave an example of 81 people?
yeah,
Those 81 people?
those are all middle class persons.
Those 81 people?
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. The middle class is shrinking because we aren't creating the kind of jobs that you need to have a middle class, and the cost of living in the Bahamas continues to rise, and so even though you may have been a middle class and you still have a job, you're losing ground. You're losing ground because your electricity bill is going up. You're losing ground because your food bill is going up. You're losing ground because your health bill is going up. And the list goes on and on and on.
You think part of the problem, Mr. Winder, is that the government has too much control over the economy? We too government-centered?
Well, I think Bahamians like it that way.
Yeah,
I think
and I actually like. I think that to me that's a problem.
But it is a problem. It is a problem because government, by their very nature, not any government, whether it's in the Bahamas, Jamaica, Trinidad, anywhere, and any party, by their very nature, tend to move a lot slower. They don't react quick and fast enough to what's happening in the environment. See, Mr. Jones has a business here. Well, he has to react. He has to take into consideration what the people are thinking, what kind of products he needs to come up with in order to be able to ensure that his revenue base retains a certain level. Well, if you're working at some other place, don't have that same concern about revenue because the government is providing you with funding, and then you can see the lack of innovation and the lack of real thinking and trying to do something.
Or do we have a problem or something wrong with our psyche? Let me tell you why I say that. A fellow will go to university, will come, whatever, a professional. He come back to the Bahamas and say he can't find a job. Right? Mind he's a university trained man, but he's looking for a job. I would have thought, right, if you were university trained and you're a professional, you should find a way to create your own employment rather than looking for a job.
Well,
and because he can't find a job, he goes back to the States.
Well, that's in all fairness, though. I think.
No. Let me tell you why I say that. Right?
Okay.
My career, I'm an agriculturalist. That's the least important sector in this economy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to tell me the least important.
Mm-hmm.
It contributes less than 1% to the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done nothing else other than being in that field. All right?
Okay.
Okay then.
So, but the point, Mr. Aeneas, is that let me explain to you where the challenge came in, and let me tell you where we, as a country, and I don't know who to blame, whether it's been the governments, the church, just general teaching. But the reality is that when we created the wealth that we created in the last 30 plus years in this country, those of us who created that wealth are really the ones who ought to be more responsible for creating and innovating new jobs, because we had the capital and we had the experience and the know-how.
We were in a good cycle.
Right, we were in a good cycle. But guess what did we do?
Yeah.
How many Jones do we have?
Yeah.
That's the problem. How many Franklin Wilsons do we have?
Yeah.
The point is, those of us who truly had a leg up didn't use that opportunity to create. Instead, we built bigger houses, we took a lot of vacations, And, and as a result, we don't have real productive assets.
Okay. Let's take a break here. This is Jones and Company and Mr. Raymond Winder, who is an expert in the financial services sector, certainly the managing partner of Deloitte & Touche. She is our guest on the program today. We'll come right back.